Anybody? All right. So this should be easy. All right. Me too. Principle 2. That's what we're talking about tonight. Is sanity, the way the program talks about sanity. Principle 2. Earnestly believe that God exists, that I matter to Him, and that He has the power to help me recover. Happy are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Matthew 5:4. And then step 2, we came to believe, it's a process, that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. For it is God who works in you to will and to act according to His good purpose. That's Philippians 2:13. So yeah, insanity. I actually like talking about this one because it's so cool that the program and that the Bible, that they recognize that we're going to feel this way, that we're going to feel untethered at times. And certainly we're going to do things that are against our best interests that would fall into that category. Insanity, almost everybody has felt slightly insane at some point. Almost everybody has said, I just need to slow my head down. I can't sleep because my thoughts are spinning. I'm obsessing about this one thing. And those are all the forms of insanity, that kind of thing that we're talking about here. And what is that insane and constant dialogue in our heads? And it is a dialogue. If two voices are chattering, which voice is you? You know, when you're sitting there and you go through all this stuff in your head, you're arguing with yourself. How can that be sane? Shoot, I was supposed to call John tonight, I promised. And then you're like, well, I can't call now, it's probably too late. But he's going to think I'm a flake. I better call him anyway. What if he's putting the kids to bed? What's wrong? What is wrong with me? I can never remember anything. Maybe I should just give up on getting the job anyway because I'm not qualified. And that's sort of the kind of nonsense that goes through our heads. Man, is that sane? No, there's a conversation between who? You and you? That's not that, and one of them is, you always take one side or the other, and then the other one takes the other side, no matter what it is. They're always taking two sides. Makes it very hard to make decisions. And how am I supposed to find peace and that surpasses all things if my mind is going absolutely nuts all the time? I can't get a moment's rest from my thoughts. And this week has been really a lot like that, and I've had a really hard time sleeping because I get into bed and I try to pray and I try to calm myself down, but I'm still plotting. What am I going to do? How am I going to get out of this? Whatever it may be. And even though I just said a prayer, that doesn't come to mind first. I'm trying to come up with a solution personally. I'll tell you that the promise is that the voice that narrates the world will change if we invite God in on every decision. And it says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, so always grateful before it even happens, present your requests to God. That's not after He's done it. We do it with thanksgiving before He has clearly answered us. And the reason the voice takes every side of every argument is that left to our own devices, we don't have enough information to make the decisions. We don't know how it's going to come out. So we're really kind of banging around in the dark trying to figure out best case scenario. Okay, well, if this happens, but everything in the world is going to impact that decision. And the reason the Bible tells us this is that because somebody knows the answer already. And all God is asking us to do is ask. And so we got, you're trapped in this godless tug of war with yourself, trying to rely on our intuition. And praise God we're not left to our own devices. Because you're a holy son or daughter of God Himself, and He will leave the 99, as it said in the song tonight, to find you, to find me. Well, I was just in a meeting earlier in the church today, and they realized, because everybody's new here, They realized that I quit drinking the week I started at this church. I didn't quit drinking. God quit me drinking the week I started this church. And I still don't believe it. I still will go back and say, well, how am I going to quit sugar? Well, the same way you quit alcohol, by asking for God's help. But for some reason, I think that maybe that one's bigger or different, or no, it's just another thing. There's no order of difficulty in miracles for God. There's not a bigger one and a smaller one. He just says, boom, and that's it. So, when you ask God for help on every decision, you won't hear, yes, you should marry her. That's not the kind of answer you're going to get. He's going to silence the egocentric voice that's yapping in your brain. So basically, the small, still voice for God comes through so that you can hear the answer. Because the answer is, he's always telling us the answer. But it's noisy in there. That's why we're all confused. But we have to practice listening and praying. Praying is listening. We do a lot of talking to God, but thousands of times throughout the Bible it talks about meditation, about Jesus going to meditate, about spending days in the wilderness meditating and praying. Jesus doing this. And most of us aren't going to spend 5 minutes asking and praying. And so this is our solution. And he says, test me. Do it. And I thought, there's no way he's going to stop me from drinking. I'm going to have to do this on my own. I get that they say that this is how it works. But that's not true. It was lifted. The obsession was lifted. And more about that conversation, I remember going, I really need to quit drinking. It's going to kill me. Why am I always so extreme? And then I would go, yeah, but I just drink on weekends. Yeah, but I drink a whole bottle. And I would go through this whole thing in my mind. And then, right near the end, I would go, but Mike has his bachelor party next month. I can't do that to the guys. So now I've continued my addiction looking like I've made a selfless choice in my own mind. I've rationalized it. And what I realized after years of doing all that is that there's always something coming up. There's always something coming, well, I can't do it for now because it's Halloween. I can't do it now because it's Christmas. I can't do it because it's Thanksgiving. And then I've got to go see my family. And there's never a good time. So all times are good times. And sometimes the harder times are the ones that work the best. I knew a guy who quit days before Christmas. And he had to get through that day the first year. But then afterward he was going, not so bad, comparatively. I had to go home to my family 3 days after I quit, when they don't even know I quit. So it doesn't matter if it's alcohol, it doesn't matter what it is. We just have to hand it over. Otherwise it is insane because we keep doing the same things over and over expecting a different result, right? We keep going, this is how, tonight I'm not going to do it. Tonight I'm not going to do it. You know what? Last week I took a Desire chip for sugar and I'm realizing it's exactly the same type of addiction for me. It's still one where the only way I can not eat sugar so far, because I'm relying on myself, is to not leave the house after a certain time. Because I will stop and get something. And it may not be as much as it was before, but it's something, and it's always feeding that addiction. So I'm sure I'm not the only one in the world, but I eat 100% healthy all day long and then binge on sugar. So, so we want to eventually learn how to hear this quiet voice of God, because that's where we're going to find the profound peace. That's what he tells us. We're always narrating the world we see in hopes of making it feel safe to us. We're always trying to work it out. What we're really doing is rationalizing our behavior in the world. If we let the voice for God, or his Holy Spirit, be our narrator, we will relapse into the peace that merely observes the world through the lenses of love. And it's not this big active thing. All of a sudden, your glasses change. And we start to look at the world through the lenses of love. Instead of constant chatter and confused indecision. Aaron, good to see you, brother. So relying on our own power, our own strength, and our own judgment is what got us here in the first place. And it's amazing. I can't tell you how many people call for help with an addiction, and then they tell me what they will and will not do toward those ends. They tell me they need to trust their gut on what steps to take to recover. Really? If you already know what it takes to get well, and you have a burning desire to get well, then why have you not already taken those steps? The answer is no, most of the times they have. And they couldn't do it. And if you have and it didn't work, wouldn't it be insanity to keep trying to do the same thing? To continually go back home and go through that failed method again? Same result every single time. If you have not done everything in your power to rid yourself of these afflictions, then you probably aren't at the point where you would understand surrender to be your only option. So that's why in the A's, AA and so forth, they talk about that moment of desperation. Because that's when you go, my way doesn't work. My way doesn't work. And really, that is the moment of turn. And it's best to get yourself to go do something about it right now when that happens. Because what we keep seeing is if anybody calms you down, if anybody comforts you, you'll put it off again. So it's this crazy desperation that makes us look for God. And I happen to believe that that's part of that plan, to get us back. Under most circumstances, it is only this incomprehensible demoralization that will lead you to seek another way than the one you're using right now. I sought God before I had a problem with alcohol, but only when convenient. When things went really well for me, I would swell up in pride and graciously deflect the praise. For looks. Because that's what a good person does, right? But when things went poorly, I would pass that credit on to God and other people. Amazing how I would chalk the good up to my own actions, but the bad would need to be assigned to God and everybody else. I have to give those resentments elsewhere. I have to make sure that I am never guilty. And so what have I done? I've put the power outside where? The only place that it can't be reached, outside of me. I am now relying on you to change for me to be happy. And I have no control over that. I barely have control over myself in the situation, and only because I'm praying do I. So to think that I'm going to put the blame off over here, and that somehow is going to alleviate it for me, I've found that doesn't happen. It just stays out there and with me, because the idea does not leave its source. It's an interesting aspect of recovery that you can have really strong willpower and generally sound judgment, but find yourself helpless when it comes to this particular thing. It's one of the reasons everybody has trouble when they say that my life is unmanageable. It may be manageable in certain respects, but not in this respect. And so that's confusing because people will say, well, it's just a problem of will. Well, then why was I able to get straight A's in a top college? Why was I able to, you go through all of the different things that you were able to accomplish, but not this one. And so that isn't what it is. But when it comes to leaving our hurt, our habit, our addiction, our compulsion behind, both can be true. We may have control of parts of our lives and no control over this part of our life. And presumably, you would have handled your issue were you capable by yourself. Because nobody really wants to go tell everybody about it. This leads me to the conclusion that God wants you to reach out for help from your brothers and sisters and from Him. It's also clear that it is a necessary benefit, that there is a necessary benefit in doing the work that leads to recovery. He could simply lift the desire, as there's no order of difficulty in miracles, right? He could easily just go, done. But in a vast majority of cases, He doesn't. Because we are to do this work.